Hello, my name is Phoebe, and I'm a 35-year-old woman. Today I want to tell you about one of the worst moments of my life that ended up bringing about a positive change in my life, but through the most painful way. First, let me tell you a little about my family. I grew up with no siblings and only my two parents. My family was pretty wealthy, and my parents made it a point to make sure that I enjoyed every part of life growing up. The biggest contributor to that was my dad. My dad and I were very close. We were partners in crime, as my mom used to call us, whenever we played harmless pranks on her. So it was devastating when we found out that Dad had been diagnosed with cancer. Thankfully, they had detected it pretty early on. We started the treatments right away. My dad went into remission, and we thought that life would go back to normal after that. I was in college at that time, and it was around then that I had met my now ex-husband, Ryan. We started dating after one of our mutual friends introduced us to each other. Ryan was genuinely a kind and caring guy. He made me laugh and was in general very empathetic. He was the perfect guy for me. If there was one flaw in our relationship, it was Ryan's mother, Amanda. Amanda figured I was rich because, well, she did one Google search and found my information, and for some reason she decided that I was snobby. She actively made jokes at my expense. I didn't mind it because I knew that these jokes were only coming from a very bitter side of her. But I drew the line with her when she made fun of my dad getting cancer. Ryan and I chose to go low contact with her after that. We got married a couple of years after we graduated, and we were living well. Then disaster struck my life once again. After a full 9 years, Dad's cancer came back, and this time it was even more aggressive. We put him under treatment, but they weren't working. I was running back and forth from the hospital to work. I needed to give Mom time away from Dad as well. Ryan wasn't really there, but I wasn't too focused on that at that moment. Everything was happening so fast, and eventually Dad slipped into a coma. He then went into a vegetative state, which is how he remained for the next 6 months. We tried to hold on to him, but eventually we knew it was time to let go. I had been by my dad's bedside when he passed away. It was a heartbreaking moment for me to watch his life support be pulled away from him. I was a crying mess, and so was my mom. Ryan had held me as I cried, but he didn't show much emotion. I didn't think much of it because, for starters, I was too upset to worry about how Ryan was reacting to my father's death, and also because I didn't think that everyone dealt with grief the same way. So maybe that was Ryan's way of expressing his grief. Anyways, the next few days were filled with filling out the paperwork and arranging the funeral and wake. It was a trying time because I had so many things to do, along with dealing with the grief of loss. My mother was too overcome by grief to even do anything else but sit in her room and cry. I tried to be there as best I could for her, but I needed to get things done. Thankfully, her sister was there to comfort her while I was busy doing other things. During this time, though, when I most needed Ryan, he began to grow distant. I would try to find comfort in him, but he was always too tired or busy. Now, keeping in mind, both of us were still working, but I was doing more than just work. I tried to be understanding of his tiredness, but I found it really hard considering I was still shaken up by my father's death. I approached him about it one day. "Can we talk?" "Yeah, what is it?" "You seem off." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you seem really distant and uncaring." "You're going to have to be clearer than that, Phoebe." "Well, I've been struggling for a while now with Dad's death and all, but every time I try to talk to you about it, you just shut off. I don't know how you expect me to react to that. Just tell me if I've done something to you." You were more considerate when my dog died. You were kind and caring. But when it comes to my father, your dad dying is very different from your dog dying. I don't know how to help you out about it. I don't expect you to comfort me with words or anything. Maybe just hold me or just listen to me. That itself would be more than enough. I don't think that will help you out. You need more than that, you know. What? I'm feeling really tired. Can we not do this right now? He did it again. I mean, I did not know why I expected anything else from him. I felt so hurt and upset at what he was doing, but I couldn't seem to wrap my head around why he was doing it. I decided to just leave him, because I had much more important things weighing on my mind. Ryan chose to not attend the funeral, and while I was upset, I was also angry. I didn't have time to feel it, though, because I was busy interacting with other family members and friends. My mother did ask where Ryan was, but I told her to leave it alone. I stayed with my mom for another few days after the funeral was done. I needed to be with someone who could understand and comfort me. Plus, I got to be that person for my mother, too. We spent our time watching all of Dad's favorite movies and eating his favorite foods. Ryan would call me once a day, and I would give him one-word replies. I hoped that he would understand just how mad I was at him. Even if he did understand it, he never acted any differently. He just continued to go on as if nothing was wrong. During these days, I also got what Dad had willed to me. He had quite a few assets in his name, and I got about 60% of it while my mom got the rest. Don't get me wrong. Mom got the house and the rest of the money that Dad had, so she was still pretty set for the rest of her life. Dad just thought that I would benefit from a little more, considering I was younger. I didn't tell Ryan about it because I didn't see why I needed to tell him when I was still upset with him. When I finally got back home, I did it without telling Ryan about it. I walked in and noticed that Ryan's mother, Amanda, was there. I didn't know why she was there, considering Ryan and I had agreed to have barely any contact with her. I almost walked into the room when I heard them talking, so I just spoke to Julia, and she told me that Phoebe left her house and will be here shortly. I don't know how I'm going to deal with her emotional messiness. Look, you just have to put up with it for a little while longer. We have a bigger plan than we need to focus on. I know, but it's just so hard to pretend like I care about her emotions, Ryan. Julia told me that Phoebe knows about her share of the inheritance. Hasn't she got it yet? The paperwork is still processing, so it will be a while, but it's a lot of money. How big are we talking here? Like life-changing money or just make life more comfortable money? Hell yeah! How are we going to go about getting that money into our hands? Well, you just have to be very emotionally available to her. You need to make her feel secure and calm. And when you've done that, you can slowly ask her what her bank details are, just so you can check if the money got credited into her account. I don't think she'll give up her bank details that easily, Mom. She's grieving right now. She doesn't have the same reasoning skills that she had before. All she will see is her husband trying to lighten the load of her worries, and she'll give it up. You know what? You're right. Knowing how stupid she can be when she's emotional, I just know that this plan will work. Once you have access to her account, withdraw the money, then deposit it into my account. I'm so excited. I can't believe someone as boring as her gets to have that much money. Life can be unfair in the worst ways possible, my dear. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, which was why midway through their conversation, I started recording everything they said. I felt sick and like I was about to throw up. I heard Amanda and Ryan laughing at me, and I didn't understand why Ryan suddenly viewed me that way. Or was it not suddenly? Had he only been with me because he knew that I came from money? The thought was too sickening for me to keep thinking, so I quietly left the house. I made sure to make it look like I never entered to begin with. I drove back to my mother's place because I could think of nowhere else to go. I felt numb emotionally. I mean, that would have been the only appropriate reaction to finding out that my husband viewed me as a pathetic, over-emotional loser whom he could easily steal from. You know, the worst part about that plan was that they were right. I would have very easily just given him my bank details, and that was not because I would have been too overcome with grief, but because I loved and trusted Ryan enough to know that he would never have done me wrong. If I hadn't overheard their conversation, I would have fallen into their stupid trap. And that pain would have been even worse because not only would Ryan have betrayed me, but he would have also stolen the only thing that Dad left for me. I wanted to feel angry, but at that point, I was so used to the anger that I had been keeping inside against Ryan that it didn't seem to make a difference. When I reached my mother's place, she walked over to me with concern. "Honey, where'd you go?" "Nowhere. I just got off the phone with Amanda." "Why were you talking to Amanda?" "She called me a while ago, too, to ask when you were coming back home, and she got worried when you took so long to get back." I almost flew into a panic, too. "Are you okay?" "Why did Amanda call you about me going back home and not Ryan?" You know, I did think that was odd, but at the same time, even though you haven't told me anything, I know that there's something happening between the both of you that has been going on for a while. I haven't pried, because I hoped you'd come and talk to me about it. Yeah, well, Ryan had been acting very weird with me ever since Dad died. Oh, weird how? I don't really know how to describe it without seeming childish, but he was very distant and cold. Like he wouldn't comfort me when he saw me cry. Instead, he'd just leave the room whenever I tried to talk to him. He was always conveniently tired and didn't want to talk. Oh, honey, that's horrible, sure, but I know that he behaved that way because he thinks of me as an over-emotional loser. Phoebe, how can you say that? Ryan's your husband. He can't possibly think of you in that way. Maybe you should talk to... I don't want to talk to him, honey. You can't be stubborn about this. If you are, you'll ruin your marriage. No, I don't need to talk to him about anything because he's the one that ruined our marriage, huh? What do you mean? I played the recording back to my mother and watched as her face turned from confusion to pure horror and disgust. She asked me if the recording was real, and I explained how I had reached back home just after she got off the call with Amanda. I happened to hear them speak, and I recorded it because I couldn't believe my ears. My mother was understandably furious. She gave me the biggest hug and tried her best to make me feel better, but I was so emotionally drained that I couldn't reciprocate any of her emotions or even appreciate her actions. I just asked her if I could crash for the day and if we could deal with everything the next day, and she assured me that we could. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of texts from Ryan asking me where I was. I didn't want to reply to him, but I knew that I couldn't let him know that I found out about his plans. I asked my mom if she had told Ryan or Amanda anything about me being with her, and she told me that she had gone to sleep right after me. So I quickly texted Ryan that I was back at my mother's place because she ended up not feeling too well last night, and I turned around and went back to her. After that, Mom and I ate breakfast in silence. Thankfully, it was the weekend, which meant that we could laze around in bed all day. Mom went out to buy some groceries, which were chocolates, ice cream, cookies, and everything else that heartbreak requires. We lounged in bed all day and rewatched Dad's favorite movies for the 6th time. As evening drew nearer, my mom was losing her patience with me. I could see it in the way that her legs began to bounce, and the fact that she was quite literally biting her nails. I knew that she wanted to talk about how I could deal with my situation, and if I was being honest, so did I. So I paused the movie and turned to her. All right, stop biting your nails. Let's talk about what happened last night. Finally, I had some thoughts. But first, I needed to know how you feel. Well, I don't feel great. It hurts to think that the man I love didn't love me back the same way. Do you think that he never loved you? Or that this was a recent shift? Gosh, I hope it was a recent shift. I can't imagine him having stayed for years just because he wanted my money. We went through way too much for that. And who do you think is to blame for this sudden shift? Then, obviously, his mother. I don't know why, but that woman has a thing against me from the start. We were supposed to have no contact with her, but then... Well, what do you think is the best course of action to take here? If I'm being completely honest, I really don't know. A part of me wants to confront him, but another part wants to just... not. Okay. Well, what if you don't confront him, but instead play along with his and Amanda's little scheme? You mean like trick them into believing that their plan is working? Yes, and what you could do is also record everything they say and do. I say you should bug the entire house with cameras and microphones. Nothing either of them do or say can get away from you. But what do I do with all that? Oh, honey, you leave him. You deserve someone who's at least 1,000,000 times better than him. You're right, I'll do that. With that, we decided to put our plan into motion. The first thing we did the next morning was go to our local Home Depot and buy the hidden cameras. These cameras come equipped with the audio feature, so I didn't have to worry about anything else. We went over to our place when Ryan was at work so we could set everything up. We left things as they were and found a divorce lawyer to file my divorce and represent me. I got back home again only after Ryan got back from work. He seemed surprised to see me, but I just told him that my mother was feeling all better, so I came back home. To Ryan had a sudden change in character. Suddenly, he was patiently waiting to hear me talk about my feelings. I only felt anger towards him for doing that. I knew that the change was only because he wanted to steal from me. However, I kept my cool and played my part. Although instead of pouring my heart out to him, I made sure to tell him that I was just too tired and drained to think of anything. This went on for a week, and Ryan was very affectionate and caring. He made me all my favorite foods every day and even took on all the chores. I wish that all of that was genuine, especially because when he did those things for me, sometimes I would look into his eyes and I couldn't understand how a man so cruel could be so nice. I would not see any hatred or annoyance in his eyes, and that only made me more bitter. Finally, he asked me for my bank details one night. "Hey, darling, how are you feeling?" "I really don't want to talk about it." "You know it's not healthy that you keep pushing talking about how you feel away." "I'm here for you. You know that, right?" "Yeah, of course I know that." "Maybe I should get into therapy, though. I don't think you'd be able to help me out with the immense amount of grief I'm dealing with." "I fully support that." "Anything to see you happy, darling. But how are we going to afford a therapist? I mean, this is the nicest way. But aren't they, pretty expensive?" "Yeah, but Dad left me some money and when it hits my bank, I can get therapy." "Oh, I bet that's a lot of paperwork. You know what? Why don't you let me handle all of that?" "Why?" "I don't mind doing the paperwork." "Shh. It'll only put more stress on you. I just want my love to rest and heal right now. Why don't you let me take care of things? At least as an apology for how I behaved before." "All right, I guess." I gave him my bank information, except I gave him the wrong PIN. You see, when he did eventually try to get into my account, his wrong attempts would prompt me to get a message from my bank that would also serve as proof of his attempted theft. After that, it was only a matter of waiting. It took Ryan another 4 days before he attempted to withdraw the money that had been deposited in my account. He also decided to log into my bank through the bank app on his phone. It did not work. Next, he tried to withdraw money from the ATM. He must have tried it multiple times at work because my bank called me to inform me of the multiple attempts to withdraw money using the wrong PINs. Another thing was that Amanda, she came over to our place whenever I was at work, and Ryan was there. The two of them would talk about how their plan was taking time and how Ryan was unable to log into the town. With everything in my hands, I acted like I was going to work one day and made my way back home once Ryan was gone. I packed up all my things and only left him the divorce papers. I also left him a note stating that if he wanted to contact me, he should do it through my lawyer. I handed over the evidence to my lawyer and let her deal with everything thereafter. Ryan, of course, tried to contact me many times, but I just blocked him. Amanda also texted me a bunch, saying things like I was ruining their lives and that I owed Ryan an apology for wasting all his time. Knowing the both of them and their greed, they contested the divorce. The both of them looked proud when I saw them in the courtroom, but that didn't last too long. After the hearing started, my lawyer presented the court with the evidence of Ryan and Amanda plotting to steal my inheritance just days after my father died. To say they looked shocked would be an understatement. Both of them looked like they had seen ghosts, while their lawyer looked angry beyond belief. The hearings lasted pretty long because Ryan tried to claim that I was financially abusing him for years because even though I come from money, I never contributed it to the household, which resulted in him having to work like a dog to survive. However, my father had made it explicitly clear to me that when I moved out of the house, whatever age it be, I was not going to get a cent from him unless I absolutely needed it. The best part was that my dad had it in writing, so I could also provide the court with that in writing. Needless to say, that made an even worse impression on Ryan. Finally, the judge ruled that because of Ryan's attempted theft, instead of paying a fine, I was to get 85% of all our joint assets. Amanda and Ryan were furious, but this time it was my turn to look smug. I walked out of that courtroom with so much pride and confidence, and I have never gotten down from that high. Ryan and Amanda called and texted me a bunch to tell me that I was insensitive and manipulative, that I ruined their lives. Ryan would sometimes throw in an apology and beg me to come back to him, but I won't ever do that. My mom and I are living pretty happily right now. Dad's death is still painful to remember, but at least it brought about a positive change in my life. Thank you for listening.